Okay, so anyway, over to you, Mike.
Okay, just quickly talk again about Bodleian student editions. This is something that's been going on since 2016 actually, and a number of collections have been looked at that time, in that time. And then of course it all went into abeyance during lockdown, and the whole thing closed down, and we didn't do another class for 3 years actually, and it started again in May last year. And we decided to look at the letters of Maria Cowper, spelled Cowper, this is her, because we'd already done a student editions workshop on her sister's letters. The sister is Penelope Maitland, with the smaller picture in there. And Penelope Maitland turned out to be a very interesting character indeed. We were actually given the Penelope Maitland letters by a descendant of the person she was corresponding with. So that was a very generous act in itself. Now the sister's maiden name is Madan, and some of you may be familiar with Madan from the Bodleian catalogues, Falconer Madan, who was, they were his great aunts, which is just, seems to be a coincidence, they didn't come down that route, these letters. He was the descendant of Spencer Madan, their brother, who was a bishop of Peterborough. They were also cousins of the poet William Cowper. This used to be quite well known, he's not quite so well known now, I think. He'd be chiefly remembered now as being the collaborator with John Newton, the abolitionist, on the Olney hymns, The Amazing Grace being one of the hymns that was written in that work. So they did know Newton, and they knew the Wesleys too. They were early Methodists, in fact. And when we did Penelope Maitland's letters, we discovered they were absolutely full of really interesting details about politics, religion, health, music, growing old, reading, and so on. And they're written in this very forthright and engaging manner. And Maria Cowper turns out to be a chip off the same block as Penelope Maitland, very opinionated letters. Now, I just wanted to quickly point out to you one of the purposes of doing these things from our point of view, why we want to transcribe these letters, is not part of the usual cataloguing process. This is what you would find if you looked in the catalogue online. You'll see it just says letters from Maria Cowper, 1717 to 1837, to her mother, Judith Madan, to her sister, Penelope Maitland, and that's it. So nothing about the subject of the letters. You would have to know quite a lot about who the Madans or the Coopers were to benefit, to even begin to research this material. So what we're trying to do is beef up the catalogue, if you like, and have a dive into the collection and what it contains. And in a minute now, I'll just quote some of the letters and you'll see why they're could be of great interest, and why the catalogue doesn't tell you half the story. If you then Google letters Penelope Maitland now, you will find the first thing you hit is the EMLO catalogue. This is the catalogue, Early Modern Letters Online, where the transcripts are being uploaded, and you can read the transcripts there. You will also see there's another portal with the same transcripts in it. This is what we call Figshare. All the letters are also available there, and you can see them in a different context. The good thing about the EMLO database, of course, is that the letters are seen in the context of thousands and thousands of other letters from the early modern period, and they're searchable together with those, so you can begin to put her in some kind of context. But the other thing you'll see here is Liverpool University Press. This is an article I wrote for the Bodleian Library Record, which I'm sure you've all read, so here it is. But don't worry if you haven't read it, it's online now, and you can subscribe to, I'm sorry, you don't have to subscribe, you can enter it using the University of Oxford subscription. So there's no excuse now for not knowing everything there is to know about Penelope Maitland. And what I'm going to just do is just give you a flavour of these letters. So the Madan sisters were early Methodists, and I say they knew the Wesleys and John Newton. And they're also extremely conservative in their social attitudes, which makes them quite interesting, and an interesting perspective on society. So there's lots of wry comments about the foibles of modern times. And I'm going to give you an example of her invective against modern fashion, which you can see in this letter here. So she went to Bond Street in April 1794 and wrote to her sister immediately afterwards, "I want to tell you, but I cannot. My feelings at seeing the frightful vanity and mad dissipation of this town, and thinking over the abundant goodness and forbearance of God. I went only to Bond Street this morning, having my brother's coach for some necessary visits. Oh, and she's very fond of exclamation marks, the figures of women I met, all swinging their arms like men, but so madly bedizened, that apparently means to dress out in a gaudy fashion, and the shops are set out more than ever with contrivances to hide the human figure in deformity, both of men and women, that I do protest I returned so spiritless that I was obliged to take some sal volatile drops. So she's resorting to smelling salts on the sight of this. Now, she had a very receptive audience here because Penelope Maitland, her sister, who she was writing to there, wrote a month earlier to her correspondent Charlotte Perry about modern women. And she wrote, "Their dissolute lives show their dissolute hearts. What wives, what mothers, what shame to the Christian name and profession. I could not have believed that swearing like a trooper was now fashionable. But I know for a truth that two ladies do, one a young, handsome, unmarried lady, imagine the shock, the other a duchess." She was, they were not quite in tune with the zeitgeist, you might say. Going back 40 years before that, there's a very interesting letter from a younger Maria Cowper about her sons growing up in Yorkshire. And she's worried that he's picking up a Yorkshire accent, would you believe? It's an interesting social comment. He talks broad Yorkshire, as Billy, that's her older son, did when he first talked at all. But from much pains taken with him and letting him live as little among the servants as possible, he seems entirely broke of it. You will find by degrees, by repeating a word after you write, he will remember it and in time talk to be understood. So this is when she was living in Yorkshire in the 1750s in her early married life. And while she was there, she made a great trip into Cumbria, this is a really interesting pre-romantic view of Cumbria. So September 1753, writing to her mother again, I've been on a little jaunt since my last letter of only 100 miles as far as Smaردale, this is a little village in Westmorland, the strangest place that ever was seen. But, it stands at the foot of a wild moor among a number of mountains 10 times higher than any house ever built. It was a part of the world quite new to me and so far entertaining, but I would not live there for any sum that could be named. And she talks about Lady Dalston, who they were visiting, in fact, as the wife of the MP there of Westmorland. She took her to Kirby Stephen, which is their nearest town, and I was astonished at the crowds that in an instant surrounded the coach, for it seems there is but one, which is Sir James Lowther's, in the whole county, besides the poor people who are Sir George's tenants, bring presents of cakes and mellow apples and flowers, which they fling into the coach as it passes. And then this is an interesting trope, which you find a lot from sort of southern commentators about Scotland and the north. The people in these parts are as untaught as savages, and the most slovenly, lazy wretches imaginable, with neither inclination or ingenuity to improve their farms or little estates, choosing rather to starve than labour. Clearly has no idea about subsistence farming. The other thing I wanted to show you, that this I think might be going in an exhibition later in, is a nature exhibition, the pets exhibition, is that on schedule?
Yeah.
This is a list of the family that Maria drew up as an 18-year-old girl and sent to her father, who was serving with the army at that time in Flanders. And it's a wonderful list of what she regards as the family, and includes all the animals, which is quite funny actually, because apart from the siblings all named at the top, we have Long Mary, the laundry maid, and Short Betty, the housemaid. So that's how they distinguish those two. There's loads of animals named, dogs and horses and things. Then it starts sort of petering out. There's lots of unnamed animals: a sow, 10 pigs, a cat, and then 2 guinea pigs, 2 guinea piglins, 6 French ducks, 6 English ducks. It's beginning to sound like partridge. 10 chickens, 2 starlings, a blackbird. Really? 2 goldfinches, a greenfinch, an ass colt, an owl. In all, 82. So there we are. That's the family in 1744. I also wanted to draw attention to another source which is very useful and connected to this, is the diary. We have Penelope Maitland's diary. So we have a wonderful insight into her mentality and her daily thoughts, a lot of religious reflection, but also a lot of interesting comments on politics and life in general. And at the end of the diary, in Maria Cowper's hand, is this extraordinary list, which she calls Well, she names it records, but it's actually instances where she thinks that Providence has intervened to help her in life. A very Methodist thing to do. But it seems, it's a shame Andrew Honey isn't here, because he's a resident expert on pins, isn't he? Pins of the Jane Austen era. This is full of references to accidents involving pins, which seem to be a hazard of Georgian life. So she says in March 1788, myself escaped a minikin pin in my cup of tea this morning, and then singular escape from a pin that darted against my eyelid. And then we have, somewhere down here, I spied a pin in the bottom of the glass, just as Mr Pratt was going to drink his wine. But it's not all about pins. I mean, for example, I narrowly escaped being burnt to death, a hot poker catching my muslin apron. And then later on, I had a narrow escape from falling downstairs. So she seems to think this is God helping her, but it sounds to me like he's having a real good go at getting rid of her, quite honestly. Oh yes, I found lately 2 pins during a meal upon my plate. Yeah. So, yeah. However, there are a few successes in there. The inoculation was a great success of her children, for example. So it's not all doom and gloom. So I think really the best thing for me to do now would be to let you have a look at these things, and I think you've got the idea with that, as they say. Yeah.
Thank you.